pedaling so hard as they come around to the white flag. White flag in the air. It's a three-man race. Here they come around. 3 wide, 1 lap to go. BKB on the outside. Final lap of the 2016 Little 500 SAE on the inside. Delts on the outside. BKB takes the lead into turn number 2 with the white jerseys. They were winners in 2014. Can they win it this year? Delts coming around on the outside. Luke Tormoehlen takes a 2-bike advantage as they head towards turn number 3. SAE on the outside. Tormoehlen with the lead. Here they come. Luke Tormoehlen around the final turn. Can they catch him? They cannot. It's going to be Delta.
This is Dr. Ben Pearl with Fitfoot U. We're going to be looking at one of the most unlikely finishes in the history of the Little 500. We're going to have Courtney Bishop and the Fab Four from the 2016 Little 500. Coming up next on Fitfoot U.
Okay, so today on Fitfoot U, we've got a little preamble, a bonus. Well, first, that incredible, I guess, and Eddie agreed that this race with your team that you coached, Courtney, was arguably, because there's always going to be an argument, the greatest comeback of a team that wasn't expected to win the race. I think that's sort of the moniker of what I have come to understand. I don't know if it was physically the biggest lead exchange comeback, but this team of 3 rookie riders and 1 sophomore was not expected to win the race. In fact, you were touted to be fairly low, and in horse racing, they always call that a dark horse. Like this horse is a long shot. But you got it together, and I don't, you guys might know the stats more than I. At what was the longest? Because we just saw the finish of that race, which was exciting as heck. You had 3 blazers at the end on that last that white flag lap, and so. Well, once your teammates get on this, we'll circle back to how everything got started. But from a physical lead standpoint, what was the longest point that you guys recollect that you were behind in that race in 2016?
Courtney, I think you're on mute.
I'm going to turn it. Go ahead. He's on mute. Let me do this. Let me call him back and get him back involved. Hold on. I think Eddie dropped the call. Eddie, are you still here?
Can you guys hear?
Yeah.
Now I can.
I think Eddie dropped.
You can?
And then we got your teammate here.
Okay. Will Lessenhop's in there. I just let Will.
Hey.
Okay. So we got, looks like we got three of the, and there's 1, 2, 3. Yep. Jack. 1, 2, 3. Do I need to admit one more? All right, so we got 3 of the 4 so far, and then we'll get the 4th in shortly. So anyway, you were about to say, Courtney, that about physically how much distance you had to make up.
Yeah, I think there was a spot where I think the lead was maybe a third of a lap, but we were never like in a big time jeopardy of getting lapped. And when we were, we just throw Luke on the bike to close. But we had a game plan. I'm sure, I'll let the guys talk through it, but, because I'd love to get their perspective on things.
Yeah. Hang on 1 second. Let me get Griffin signed in here. There he is. Okay, cool. So we got the Fab Four. Again, this is Dr. Ben Pearl with Fitfoot U. And today we have the probably long shot in Little 5 history, the underdog, and you guys took on that role. And before we get too far afield, everybody knows Courtney from previous podcasts and just, some of the things that he's done in the past that were ceiling breaking with Little 5. I want to start, I'm going to go top left and then go kind of Brady Bunch style to each of you. Introduce yourselves and how you got involved and interested in being on the Delts team. So let's start, I guess, with Luke up in the left there, right?
Yeah, so I joined Delts in 2014. 14. My dad was a Delt in 1969 through 72. He kind of got me interested in IU. I kind of knew I was going to IU since kindergarten. I grew up an hour from Bloomington and Seymour, Indiana. The first year I was I was a freshman when I rushed first, but I didn't do anything right. I was wearing the wrong stuff. I spilled my beer. I was pretty awkward going into rush. And then the next year I kind of had another chance at it. Rushed in like congruence with the bike team. So Delts historically since like 2009 had like bike reserved bids. They still had to be a good fit for the house, but there would be bike bids. So there was a way to like try out. And then
how did that process work real quick without belaboring it too much?
Yeah. So, I mean, when I was there, about 60 names were on the list. And then they'd whittle it down to 3 or 4. You kind of, I mean, you start with this big pool and you get them on rides. When my first ride was like a 40-mile ride, I think, on flat pedals. We were going up Bolting House on flat pedals, and it was more of just about hanging and not dropping. And I mean, they knew that you were going to be raw, but like they wanted to see if number 1, you could hurt, and number 2, you could hang. So if you could do one of those 2 things, and you had a shot. And then obviously you still have to fit in with the group. So, I mean, that first year was my sophomore year joining Delt cycling. And I loved every bit of it. I was kind of, that first year, Courtney can attest as well, that was a pretty good team in 2014. We returned one of, if not the top rider on campus. And I felt like I didn't even deserve to have a chance at like entering a race with the chance to win as like a rookie. And we were going in as one of the favorites. So I was a role rider that year, 3 or 4, and then progressed through. I mean, I was a role runner in high school, so kind of filled that same gap there. But then junior year kind of came into my own, but definitely made a lot of mistakes in the race. And then senior year, it all worked together with these 3 guys. So.
Okay, so that was your senior year, and how many races were you a vet of at that point?
So that was my 3rd race going into my senior year. These guys were all rookies. Another guy not on this call, who's actually the coach of Delts cycling, was a top 10 ITTer returning from the year before and ended up not being able to race. We found that out in the late, like mid-spring. Something happened, so then we had to go back to the drawing board. There were definitely some rough workouts and
injury or social something other.
Just
something other. Okay,
yeah, something other. But in general, we banded together and we knew that we weren't going to go marked in that race, partially, but with our ITT and our team pursuit finish, I think we finished what? 15th, not team pursuit, 17th, something like that. So
yeah, something like that. And we were second in ITTs, but then we ran 38th through 100th in ITTs rather. Sorry. Yeah. 38.
Okay.
38,
I want to get to the race too, guys. Go ahead, Kurt.
Sure.
You finish. I was going to say, I want to get to the race, but I want to introduce everybody first. So going Brady Bunch counterclockwise, let's go to the corner. Just introduce yourself and how you got involved. And that would be, you're wearing the red shirt and I can't see your name there. Remind me.
Will, hi,
Will.
nice
Hey,
to meet
Will.
you. I think everyone's Zoom might be a little bit different too.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
People are. Yeah, so I'm Will, similar situation to Luke. I got into Little 500 because I was rushing a fraternity. I knew what Little 500 was from like breaking away, of course, but I didn't really go into fraternity rush looking to do Little 500. It was just kind of something where it was brought up like, hey, like you ran track in high school and cross country in high school. Would you be interested in doing Little 5? And I actually met Luke during Rush, and he might tell you that the reason that I got a bid was because of my high school track times.
Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit more about why you were interested. I mean, you saw, you knew the culture of the Little Five. What in particular got you sort of interested to this particular group, and how that sort of fit in?
I like the guys that I was on the rush rides with, as Luke had mentioned, and then just the house was a good fit. I really just liked the camaraderie. I think I was missing coming from a really strong high school track and cross country program, and it just felt like a really good fit.
Nice. And you did that as that was you rushed your first right from the get-go, not second term.
Yes, fall as a freshman.
Yep. Okay, so for me it's the middle, and you've got like a gray golf shirt with black lapels or something on it.
Yep.
And you are
this is Jack.
Jack.
This is
Sorry,
Jack
I can't see
Moore.
the names. The names aren't popping up, Jack, but I'll get the name.
Oh, good. Yeah, so I ended up joining Delts same time as Will did. I had known the current Delts coach through like a secondary connection. So that's how I got connected to the team, and same process as Will and Luke and Griffin. We went on rush rides, and I'd also run track in high school. So that's how they knew I had some potential. And yeah, I mean, pretty similar answers beyond that, but ended up working out.
Okay, and then the last of the four, not the least, I'm sure. What was your entryway to the Delts?
Sure, my name's Griffin. Frankly, very similar to Mr. Wassenhop. I'm from the East Coast, so went to Indiana with a strong family presence out in the Midwest. Wanted to be in Greek life, started the rush process similar again to Will. Had heard of Little Five just through the prestige of it and how fun of a weekend it is, and didn't have much of an idea. Then going into Rush, of course, heard from different houses about their bike teams, and every big fraternity house had a trophy room representing things, and Delts was a little more established at the time. You could tell going in, you could see it was a pretty serious program. So again, Luke was kind of my first touch point onto the cycling team. Literally getting a tour of the house, they walk you into the bike room and they give you a 30-second spiel. Luke talks about the team a little bit. They were coming off a win when before us was 2012. So Luke was obviously speaking highly of that. So talked to him, stuck behind the group for a little bit, and talked to Luke for a little bit. And same again with Jack and Will, just was a runner in high school. Luke and his brother vetted my times and gave me a text the next morning and said, yeah, we're interested in you. We'll talk. And I was always open to it because it was either go to a D1 school and have fun a little bit and get your education, or go D3 and run for a small program. So I was always open to kind of the idea of athletics in college, and Delts kind of was so legitimate enough to.
Had you considered running track, or you just thought it was too much of a jump to a D1?
I don't think I definitely didn't have the times at the time to run D1. I'm sure I could have made more of an effort in high school to kind of get some looks, but it really wasn't a focus of mine to be serious about it.
But I mean, he was like a 940, like 3,200 runner. So like, I don't know exactly what the time was, but that's no slouch. So
930.
Well, I'll tell you just brief how it works as a walk-on, because I was a walk-on at IU, and this was several years after Sunder Nix and Jim Spivey. I found myself looking for the girls in the golf course on the morning runs, because I mean, I just was out. It was out of my league, and I hurt my Achilles in that, so I also am from a running background, but it was nice to have that running as a base. Now, did any of you have to fight injuries through your travails with the little five. Obviously not as common as running injuries, but sometimes bike injuries, getting in a practice wreck, or just some odd thing that cropped up. I guess not. You're pretty healthy. That's awesome.
That year we went pretty unscathed. We had some other issues, but in terms of staying injury free, we played it pretty safe, at least as a team. So
now before
we raced collegiately, so it wasn't like that we wouldn't put ourselves in that position to wreck or anything like that. But yeah, we went pretty unscathed for that spring at least. So
before I loop to kind of the race itself, Courtney, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you came to be the coach and what that process was like? And I don't know from the brief look that I've looked at, and I did watch a bit of the race to have a flavor of what happened. But how did your entryway to the Delts happen?
I had a kid that had reached out to me about some interest in one of two options, either joining Major Taylor in its last year or helping with Delts that at the time, I think they'd finished 13th the year before, a couple laps off the lead. And that was really the best they'd done in a while. And I said, hey, this is the last year of Major Taylor. And I had the wild idea of coaching both teams at the same time. And we were fortunate enough that we qualified, I think, 5th and 6th or 4th and 5th, something like that. And so we just picked pits right next to each other, and I stood right in the middle and coached them both. And we were fortunate enough to finish 2nd and 4th that year, but Delts had finished 2nd, and that was a huge upgrade for them, and I was the coach ever since.
And what year was that? I'm sorry.
That was 2009.
Okay. And had that ever been done in the history of Little Five?
Probably not, but it's funny. I don't even think most people noticed.
I see. I'm sure there were some good training stories. We all have them. Dog chasing things, spring break training. I think that stuff, that's what really builds and forges the bonds between the team. Maybe you guys can just sort of let me know some of your thoughts on that. And let's start with Luke and kind of just work our way down. Anything that sort of resonates as a memory of a key moment that, oh yeah, we are now a team, or wow, I can't believe we didn't get killed by that truck, or whatever the story is.
Yeah, every year us going to like Lindsey Wilson or going to Louisville, we had some collegiate races that we all went down as a team. We stayed in cabins. We rode different category of races depending on our fitness levels and experience levels, but that brought us together. 2016 year, I remember two specific instances that kind of brought us together. When Anthony went out, like our one of our best riders and senior leaders that year, we really had to go back to the drawing board. And I remember not having a good workout on bottom road individually, and it kind of getting to me. Calling Courtney from there, and all these guys were there as well. And then I remember less than a week later, a bounce back workout where we were in what we call the Wattage Cottage at Delts, and it was a roller workout. And before it, I just kind of set the tone. And I was like, look, guys, we returned the fastest lap in the race last year. We returned the experience. We returned Courtney. We know what we can do in this race. If you guys get us to the finish line, we'll deliver. So, that's one. I remember specifically that workout, and I think that was one of the best workouts of the spring. And it made me believe. So they had you, Luke, as the ace in the hole.
What was it, I guess, then that made you guys such an underdog? Was it the fact that you had 3 rookie riders and they were just not known quantities in terms of having the race of their lives on race day?
There were 3 or 4 really deep teams. I always thought that like I could personally compete with the sprinters. And I also thought that we're going in unmarked, we're going in with a race day strategy that if we execute, there's a chance. Like if you don't wreck, there's a chance that you're going to get to the finish line. So it was a little bit different for that year, but remind me of the question again. I'm sorry.
No, just you answered it. That was pretty much it. Let's go on now to who wants to go next? Who's got a story?
Here, I'll speak
Jack.
to it a little bit of the team. As a freshman and being the youngest one of the group, there was another member of my pledge class who was with us as well, but kind of being the youngest one and kind of being pulled along for the ride. I really remember coming back early from winter break, to literally come back to campus when no one was there to train for the cycling race. Still, at the time, I was still, again, not really familiar with, being not from the area, and having like a full 2-day schedule. I would go to the fraternity house, we train for 2.5, and then go back in the afternoon and do it again. So then doing that for a week and some of the kind of those difficult workouts I've ever been a part of, with Courtney at helm, kind of pacing in front of us in his big black boots, and it was definitely a memorable time for that week where I was like, all right, this is pretty serious, and I think we're pretty damn good too.
Anybody else have anything they want to share? We've got 2 of you left.
Yeah, I have
Go ahead.
one story. I believe this is in 2016 when the track was open. I believe it was around spring break time. We were just kind of doing some of our final workouts for the year, getting those in. And I don't exactly remember what the workout was, but I remember we were all feeling pretty good after it. Like I felt confident that I could at least hang in with the, lead pack of Little 500. And then once we had completed the workout, while all the other teams were still on the track, we hopped the fence and had a little, picnic kind of thing in the middle, just kind of being like, yeah, we're not working out. We're just watching you guys work out. And that was pretty fun.
Nice. Okay, so who's left?
I mean, I'd kind of pair it with those guys were saying with the spring break time really is where it's most memorable. I mean, you got like 7 guys total staying in this really big fraternity house with no one else there. And the whole time, all we're doing is just working really hard and kind of just killing our bodies to get in shape. And, you spend X amount of hours on the bike a day during that and just all kind of suffering through it. It's definitely confidence building once you get through it. But I mean, it's just so much time together, just kind of bonding over that, and good stories to come with it.
Courtney, could you tell us a little bit about, unless you have a story you want to share first about training, because that would be interesting from the coach's standpoint, about something that said these guys might just do it before we even get to race strategy.
Yeah. We have a cadence thing that we do that I think is pretty unique, and I'm kind of a stickler about that. And I remember telling those guys that, hey, we need to start training at like 145 and 155. And I remember specifically like Griffin looking at me like that probably ain't happening. And we finally got there. So I knew we were going to have a shot. So this is going to be a little curveball I'm going to throw at you, but I'm actually currently coaching at a track meet. So I'm going to get called away here soon, which is probably a good opportunity for you guys just to talk without me anyways. But I will say this, I said I've coached a lot of teams, and between, Jack Moore, Will Lussenhop, and Griffin Casey, it's really tough to get guys to peak at the same time. And usually the way, even in great years, you'll have a couple of guys that peak and a guy that had an off race, but to have all 4 guys like ride completely out of their minds on the same day is something that I will never forget, because everybody stepped up and and it was a team that besides Luke, really, and it's funny because we even laugh about it at the banquet. At our own awards banquet, we barely got a mention because no one knew who the hell they were. You know what I mean? And so, but for 4 guys to just ride out of their minds like that, something I'm always going to remember and be eternally grateful for, and the hard work that those guys put in, and the philosophy that we had, like Luke alluded to, and like I said, when I get off here, you guys can talk about this, but their whole mission was to sacrifice everything to get Luke to the end. And it was a pipe dream going in, but every lap getting closer to the end, it's like, we're going to do this. And that was amazing. So
Courtney, you talked about a certain chess gambit or a gambit that you named something else. What was that?
I can give away some things. I don't even think we used this. Any of you guys remember Marshall Swindle?
Yep.
Yeah,
So
You want to
explain
talk
that.
about that?
Yeah. And basically, it's not rocket science, but it's something that's like a lost art. And that's, if you're going to have a great gap in little 5, you've got to give ground before you take off. And those guys executed like nobody's business. As a matter of fact, the person I got on most about exchanges was probably Luke that day.
But go watch those exchanges.
Yeah. But I mean, everyone did just a phenomenal job. But I'll let you guys wrap, and like I said, I the level of appreciation I have for that quartet, the little 5 Fab Fours, will never be forgotten, because what you guys did was special. And if you listen to the intro of that whole going into it, I mean, they mentioned a lot of teams going in. They never mentioned us, not once. So I loved it. So there it is.
That particular race has got about 20,000 views, which is pretty good for a little 500 race. That's a good amount of views. So it was an exciting, competitive race that year.
And Ben, you mentioned most unlikely winner of Little 500, and I know that was a topic of discussion in some of the group chats since then. I did want to say one of our guys in our program's a data analyst, and he ran a huge like a predictor on since ITTs were available, but it was ITTs, team pursuit place, experience, missing out finishes, and any indicator that you could have going into the race, and including sprinter. And we were the most unlikely, which was kind of crazy. But I know that
who knew they had a tout sheet on the little 500.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
you're scouting a college football game, That's funny.
Yeah. So
That's
I
funny.
always
And
said
it was one of the fastest races in history also, so even more unlikely.
right.
Yeah, that's cool.
But
That's cool.
Hey, I'm
I
going to
always
let you guys go so you guys can wrap. But hey, fellas, as always the best. Always catch you in April.
see you, Courtney.
All right, bye, guys.
But
All
I
right,
would
so-
always say ignore probability when you can dictate the outcome. And I felt like we went into that race expecting to win. So
Yeah. So tell me about some of the race highlights, and you're talking, Luke, and then we'll get some of the things that happened that maybe were unexpected. I'm sure there's always a couple little wrinkles that happen. And if any of you want to chime in, just because we're first talking with Luke because he's talking, but then just sort of rotate in on just some memorable moments. Because I'll share one that I had that was funny. I'm going out for a lap and I'm getting I had like a 25, 30% of the lap, lead. And my pit didn't have the moxie to do a double exchange, 2 teams. And so they waved me down and I'm like, are you kidding me? I did my lap burn. And this cutter, it turned out it was Vince Hazer, chased me out. So that was like one, interesting moment that I had. He was trying to use my lead exchange thing as a breakaway, just to take advantage of that moment. So I'll start with you, Luke, and then and let's not get to the end just right yet.
Right.
But then we'll talk about the finish and the setup for the finish.
Yeah, let me go last on this one. I think Jack's got a good one in terms of like
all
a
right,
random
Jack,
race one.
let's hear it, man.
Yeah, I'd say my biggest contribution was being on the bike when all the crashes happened and me not crashing. I was involved with like 2 and 1 of my stints right around lap 95 and 100. The first one, I was riding in maybe some would say not the best position in the pack. And some guys in front of me just, they wiped out. They like tangled bars, whatever. Probably 3 guys right in front of me fell down, and I ended up riding right over the wheel of one of the guys with both my wheels. So yeah, so going off, and then
it was like come hell or high water, you were not going to go down. So you had that.
Yeah, I mean, if you see the replay, I mean, it was kind of off camera, but I just have my hands on the bike and both my feet are off the pedals completely. I'm just there staying up. So I managed to stay up there. Then probably 5 laps later is when the massive crash that takes out half the field happens. And I end up being the first person to get through that. So yeah, I mean, during that little whirlwind, it ended up working out pretty well for me. And I'd say I got to give myself some credit for having some good reflexes there.
Yeah. I was talking to Courtney about that because he mentioned that you literally ran over somebody to stay afloat. And I said, you know, as athletic and as good as your reflexes were, there's also a little bit of luck, because had the angle been a few degrees more or somebody's just a little more into you, you're going down too. So it's always that combo, but it's a combination of the skill to recognize quickly, and you did. And you pressed on. So that's.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't discount the luck portion of that.
But you got to have the skill to make the luck too. You know, it works together. Yeah. All right, who else has got one before we get to Luke? And I don't know too who was sort of the pack mule of the race that ran the most laps.
We were all pretty similar in terms of that.
You cut it up equally, more.
Lesson, huh? You got one with cutters.
Yeah, I was just about to. I got a story about eating laps. Yeah. So just kind of my whole mentality. I think Jack, Griffin, and my mentality was just stay somewhere in 2nd to 6th place. There's no reason to be in the front. We just want to get Luke in a good position so he can finish the race for us. And I remember I somehow found my way, I forget exactly how it happened, in a breakaway of about 5 riders. And the cutters rider was very upset at me when he realized that I was not going to take poles with him, because I did not care about separating that group from the lead pack. And you can see it on video where he realizes that I'm not going to pole. He gets a little mad. He pushes me, actually.
Wow. Do you remember which rider it was?
I think Luke does. I don't remember who he was.
I think it was Nick Theory. Yeah.
Okay.
So then, I just remember him talking to all the other guys like, hey, let's drop Delts. And I wasn't saying anything, which made, I think, him even more mad. And I was just thinking in my head, like, well, I can hear you saying you're going to drop me. So I feel like this isn't going to work. And it didn't.
That is interesting, because there's always a little chatter during the race. It's definitely more intense than how they have those practice heats. The race is nothing like the practice heats. I mean, the practice heats a little bit of trading paint, so to speak, but the race it's up 2 notches, because it's go for broke. And there's a lot more, there's a lot more chippiness, I would say. Yeah. What do you got?
Sure. Yeah. I again, kind of echoing Will's sentiment. I definitely heard a few times throughout the race, just again, knowing our names, like Delt your turn, and just like kind of keeping our head down, like, we have a plan, and me pulling the field is not part of that plan. So so that happened more than a few times where I found myself in the front and was immediately off the front and had some not so nice comments from around the field. So we definitely weren't a favorite going into the race. We weren't a team favorite during the race either. And if I remember, it was a pretty gnarly race all in all. I think there were some pretty brutal crashes between, like, I think a kid broke his collarbone and some other things along the lines. And I remember one of my early sets, I was second on the bike to start the race after Luke's, I think, original maybe 15. And I remember hearing, it's very vivid even to this day, someone's pedal going into a front spoke, and you could hear it wind up like a ticking time bomb, and it just like exploded to the right of me. And that was just a very vivid memory. I was like, man, we're racing now, and it was a good one.
Yeah. Hey, before we get to the wind up and the setup for the finish, Luke, you know, one thing that I remember about this, and I've never really talked about it a lot, your coach, Courtney, he told me this, you know, in our sort of off camera stuff, that his sort of mantra was 25. You want to be 2 through 5 position. So I will reveal one of his little trade secrets, and you guys already mentioned that, and it's kind of obvious. You want to try to stay at least in the top third, if not, you know, that 6th seed, so to speak, of the top 5 to 6. What I remember about the race is you could be 3-4, but the accordion of it would happen so fast that by the time you know it, you were drifting back to the mid and then, you know, even the back mid. How did you sort of, and I guess it's a little different with the top 3, let's say, but like there would seem to be that shifting rotation, particularly as you got into the turns, things with bungee cord. What do you remember about that, Luke? You were one of the more experienced riders. I don't know if another had 2 or 3 years of race experience like you, but what would be your comment on those effects of making sure that you were in that top 5 and being cognizant and just how you placed yourself positionally, other than just trying to do it?
Contrary to like traditional bike racing, where when you do take a bit more pulls because of just respect and all of that, it was a little bit different. You can always, in little 5, the inside's usually open if you give it time, because people are peeling off to the outside. So even if you're like 6th, 7th wheel, as long as you're on the inside, you're going to be moving up fairly shortly. With that race, I would say SAE made a break in the middle of the race to try to kind of open things up. And that really kind of got rid of the accordion because it kind of separated some teams. So not SAE. Were there 2 breaks in that race or no?
You guys,
or was it just cutters?
Was it Sig Ep you're referring to?
Oh, was it Sig Ep in the earlier in the race?
Yeah.
Or am I getting this mixed up? Anyway, I'm getting my races mixed up. But anyway, when those breaks do happen, the main thing is like you're getting less and less teams. So at the end of that race, with 40 laps to go, it became very evident that we were just going to hang, and then there wasn't that much positioning. But to your point, kind of swindling back, you don't want to be in the back half of that pack, because then there's a chance of wrecking and stuff. So if you have to come up on the outside, and that's why you see Courtney with Jefferson, which just means moving on up. So
oh, yeah. He even had code. This guy thought of everything. It's funny. It's funny. That's hilarious. Well, what about the wind up to get the bike to Luke? Who wants to comment on that? Because you wanted to set him up, and you guys would remember, because I don't remember from watching the end of the race at what lap you end up with the bike, Luke. But anybody want to kind of sort of narrate that part of the race exchange for the finish?
Griffin?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, what was the order, guys? Confirm. Was it Lus, Jack, me, Luke to finish?
I think it was Lust to you to me.
Yeah. So it was a little surreal towards the end of the race, because we had this plan and we said it was get the bomber to the battlefield, and it was strange to be 20 laps left I think my last set was short. It was maybe 8 laps. Surreal to be like, okay, we're actually in the position that we want to be in. We're exactly where we want to be. Things have happened. So definitely nerve-wracking getting on the bike. And I think there was only 4 teams left at that point who were really competing for the sprint. So I had a pretty obvious job just to hang in there and get Luke the bike. And I didn't even give him the bike in the best position possible. My last burn of the day was easily my worst. I think I gave him the bike 4 or 5 lengths behind the leader. But he was able to, I think, close that gap in all of 100 meters.
If
everything just went according to plan.
If I recollect from the race footage, I think Cutters had a very untimely exchange in those last few laps.
Yeah, I can talk on that.
The gap was too big.
I can talk on that a little bit. So Griffin gave me the bike with 10 laps to go. I got on the bike. You have a 217 ITTer in Joker Hulick that hasn't gotten on the bike yet. His brother's about to exchange, so he was on SAE. 217 is still the second fastest ITT ever. Then you have Cutters, and you have BKB. I remember very vividly after I bridged to get to the group of 4, SAE was trying to get Joe on the bike. And there was a split second where I had to make a decision on, should I go now? Should I launch from here? Because I knew I had the pop to separate. But if I do that, I better be pretty certain that I can hold somebody off like that for 4 laps. And it just happened to be a 217 guy behind me. So I decided to kind of let him go and had the BKB kind of take pole there. For a few laps, and that's when Cutters was put in that position. I was sitting 3rd or 4th wheel, and every time Cutters came around the curve, I would say, Cutters coming around. So I was speaking to the entire track to the entire 4 teams at that point. BKB would speed up, Cutters would fall back. I would say Cutters coming around, BKB would speed up, Cutters would fall back. So it was more of like a game where I could burn BKB at the front. I could get Cutters off at the back. And then it was a 2 to 3 team race after that. And then last lap came and yeah.
You had a kick-ass finish. That was good. That was a very strong finish.
But yeah, there was a lot of talking in that race. A lot of talking. So
How were you guys in the pit when you see Luke coming around? How did that feel? When you realized you're probably going to win the race?
It was very surreal for me. I don't know if I fully processed the win until maybe a couple hours after.
Yeah.
I was in the pit just in case there's a crash, and we had to have someone hop on a bike, and I just remember watching him go around, and I was jumping around, and after he crossed the finish line, I was running around like Jim Valvano trying to find someone to congratulate with. But yeah, same as Will, it took a while to process oh yeah, we actually did that.
You had it looked like quite a fan gathering after. That was pretty much a frenzy. That was like getting into the stadium at the Grateful Dead or something. That was something.
Yeah, it was.
I think the announcer who was on the call that day called it Fratapalooza, were his words.
Yeah. Well, before we wrap it up, guys, I'm sure it was memorable. I don't want to because that's kind of the apex of what people feel about Little Five, but there's also something about the Little Five culture and what it's meant in your lives. And we won't go on and on because we all realize what a significant, benchmark and bookmark this is for all our lives that have been involved. I wasn't as fortunate as you guys. We didn't even get any kind of close to the podium our year. We were involved in a wreck, but just having the experience and the taste of the Little Five. And when, you see another rider, they got that glint in their eye about knowing everything that that you went through, and you know what they went through to get to that race and to be there, and going through quals and times when teams would make it and not make it, and sometimes just on weird things, somebody gets mono or something weird happens with one of your teammates. Courtney gave me a little bit about what you guys are doing now in life, and I'll start I guess. Will, it says you graduated in 2018. You also had some jet black races, and you're in Chicago now, right?
Yep, that's correct.
And you're let's see. So you still ride for fun. You're going out on what, like 20-mile rides, or how far are you riding these days?
20 to like 80-ish, and I've been doing gravel rides and like some fun cyclocross races. Nothing too serious. Just I still like having fun out on the bike.
When's the last time you guys got together like this?
2 years ago.
That's
Little five.
I'm sure it brings Brett back a flood of memories. I've got Griffin. I guess you were a 2-time Little Five participant. You graduated in 19. You're up in the Jersey, NYC area, I guess, and you like to ski and run. I coached skiing for 20 years, so I love skiing. Tell me a little bit about anything else in your life, or what it's meant to you, or anything else that you might want to add.
Little Five was kind of a whirlwind at the time. I only was able to do it for 2 years, but it is still a subject that is brought up more than I ever would have imagined in my life, whether it's with these guys or in friends. It's still on my job resume. Little 500 winner is still on there. So it was definitely, I kind of just fell into it, but it'll definitely be something that lives with me forever. And these guys are, as we may not text every day, but these are some of like the guys I have great relationships with. If we're away for a year, a month, 10 years, we are kind of just fall into our same dynamics that we were. We're the same friends we were. So I'm definitely grateful for that dynamic that we have.
Now, how many of you are in that, not that it's the same as you guys actually getting together on a Zoom call, but how many of you are in that Little Five alumni group on Facebook? Just you, Luke?
Yeah, I am.
You guys, maybe you're not of the Facebook generation.
I don't use Facebook.
That's too, that's too boomer, right? I'm feeling old. I'm feeling as old as I am. So, all right, Jack, you graduated IU in 17. You're active as well. Also in Chicago, do I have that right?
Yeah.
So tell me about the Windy City. What kind of things are you getting into other than that?
I mean, in general, same as Will. I'll bike around sometimes, usually on the lakeshore path. I don't hop on the bike as much as I probably would like or should. But yeah, I mean, just doing that, staying around, and then kind of to your point with like the Little Five, just contingency. Like, for example, Will and I carpooled down to the race last month. So it's cool to see them. And then when we get down there, just the Delts alumni, it's a massive pack of guys that we all relate and all know each other. And it's good to always have them around and see them.
Okay. And one thing I'll add before we get to you, Luke, is what I noticed, because I hadn't been to IU in 21 years. I went to 13 years after the 87 race that I was in. There was a 50th running, and I don't know how many of those alumni things they've done, but I did it. And, they had the decade of the 80s. And one thing I do remember is the 50s, there was a cardiac event, and they actually had an ambulance. I think the guy ended up being all right, but that was wild, seeing these guys, from the 1950s, like 6 of them or whatever, doing a little 10-lapper around the cinder track. But what I noticed when I came in and I got to know Jim through his podcasts, and Eddie Van Guy's, was very instrumental with the Cutter team and so forth. And so when I went up there to Nick's, it was like immediately there was just a connection of being involved in the event. And it's, that's a fraternal kind of thing in and of itself. And I just, I enjoyed the fact that you could connect with people like that. And particularly since I had gotten to know some of the people already through some of the interviews and things that I was doing. Luke, you wrap it up, man. You're the finisher. So I understand that you are in something active in your career. Tell us a little bit about that, and then maybe a little bit about, we already know that the race meant so much to you.
Yeah, so I manage Athletic Annex, Nora and Fishers. Work for Bob Kennedy, who was famous Hoosier alum, Olympian, former American record holder in the 5K, sub 13. That's pretty quick. But anyway, I I love my job. I saw you're a podiatrist. I do gait analysis, 3D foot scans of people's feet pretty much every day. And we work with a lot of podiatrists in the local area. And I host my own podcast, Hoosier Health Chat. So
we may have to be on each other's podcast,
right,
because of that foot run connection.
Exactly.
And yeah, I just got a 3D printer, by the way. The one I use is out of Toronto, but I'm talking with a guy, Carew Foot Care he's out of Ireland. And he's actually, and I'll, invite you, for doing this podcast with me. I'm going to give you a free invite, on the CME fee. Well, it's not the CME per se, but the entrance fee that we do for the virtual conference. So that's going to be in not till February of next year. I call it the Biomechanics Summit, and we got some worldwide people, and you'll like it. And
I'd love it.
Yeah, you'll check, and if you like, we'll switch information later. But there's a lot of stuff that I've talked to some different people about. What you're involved with 3D printing and just kind of getting it from the foot to the image to to the orthotic itself and the implementation.
Right.
So that's really cool that you do that. We definitely have that cross career path area. What else? In terms of family life or other life, in terms of post little five? And
so I'm getting married this year. I got to see most of these guys in the spring. I go back every year. Lesson Hop and Jack Moore go back every year, and Griffin goes back once every 3 years or so. But I love going back. I'm an hour from it, and still kind of helping out with Delts now, or formerly Jet Black. We return a lot of riders, and it's nice to see everyone at Nick's all the time. It's nice to talk with the little five legends like Kirkham and Courtney and, the big names up there. So, yeah, it's fun.
Well, now I'll know, a few more of you, 4 more of you. In addition, I met Courtney in person this past year. And so I probably crossed path with you and Nick's, but just didn't realize it.
Right.
That was fun. That was fun. Well, listen, I really appreciate that you guys got together for this, and hopefully you got something out of it too. And I want you to stick around for just a couple minutes informally before we sign off. But I'm going to end the recording and just give you anybody have any last words. I'll leave you with the last word before I do the sign off. Anybody have something else that they want to put out there? Well, listen, man, this was great. I look forward, hopefully, to seeing all of you, meeting you in person one day. I'm going to plan on getting back. I understand it's the 40th year anniversary of the Cutters, and they might just ring Eddie back to. He came back a couple years ago, and I was hoping that he'd come back this past year. It just wasn't in the travel itinerary for him. So I hope to see you guys at Nick's and maybe at the race. And, please, all of you have my contact now. If you ever have any questions related to the lower extremity injuries, one of the things that I'm really excited about that I'm promoting in my own practice and to practitioners, I'm really big on this pulse electric magnetic flow. It literally speeds up injury healing, bone healing. It's been known by the FDA for some time. They use these wearables for like non-union fractures and stuff, but it really now is being applied to wound healing, tendon healing. So, if somebody throws a collarbone and, you can have this, I call it the ring of life. You actually feel the pulsing. In fact, I got the thing over here. I haven't one in my kit. I'm an old guy, so I've got like a knee thing. And anyway, like you put it on your knee, you put it on your heel, and it, it's like, it's basically the field that generates little energy to facilitate healing without getting too far into the science of it. But anyway, thanks again for doing this. Until next time, this is Dr. Ben Pearl with Fit Foot You with the unlikely winners of the 2016 Little Five, the Delts. Thank you so much, guys.